Hi y'all, Connie here. So we're going to talk about stiffening snowflakes. So we're going to take it from this is my star snowflake pattern, to this. All the magic is in the blocking. So let's go ahead and get started here. All right, and I'm actually going to use a slightly bigger one because I think it'll be easier for you to see what's going on. So I'm going to start out with some warm water. And you don't have to use warm water, but it will make the snowflake absorb it just a little bit faster. So I'm just going to dip my snowflake in here and see how quickly it's soaking up that water. So I'm just going to let it soak up some water. Maybe turn it over, make sure it gets soaked in on all sides. And then I'm just going to squeeze out the extra. If you have a washcloth, you can press it between the washcloth. We're going to be manipulating it quite a bit, so you don't have to worry too much about messing it up by squishing it around, right? So there, I'm squeeze a little bit extra water out of it. All right, let me move this plate with the water. And we're going to get a second plate for our stiffener. All right, now the stiffener that I like to use is Aleene's fabric stiffener and draping liquid. There are lots of different options for stiffening. You can use sugar, you can use salt, you can use cornstarch, you can use glue, but I like this one because it is fairly permanent. A lot of the other ones like sugar and salt, you have to redo periodically, and I don't really want to have to redo them. So I like using this. It's available commercially. It's pretty easy to get a hold of. I think I ordered it off of Amazon because we're at Fort Irwin in the middle of the Mojave Desert right now, and so I don't have a lot of resources for shopping. We use the internet ordering options available to us quite a bit. Okay, so I just sort of stretched that out a little bit, and I'm gonna get this stiffener, and it's kind of like glue. Right, this is this goopy white liquid. All right, and then you can either pour it in your hand, you can pour it straight on your plate, you can make yourself a little snowflake-like thing on your plate if you want to. But we want to make sure that we work this stiffener in to both sides really well, especially on these arms. So these long arms here. That's where we really want to make sure that we work it in. And yes, this is messy. It's not a neat and tidy task. Now you can, if you want to, use a like a plastic baggie or something like that. Here, I'm gonna get some more. And kind of squish it around in there, but it takes more of the stiffener to do that. And so I usually just work it in with my fingers, just sort of massaging it into the stitches of our snowflake. And so you want to get quite a bit in there, like I said, especially on these arms, because they're going to be the thinnest spot. This one still feels kind of wet. Now, if you want to, you can try doing this without making it wet first, but I find that wetting it, although it may kind of slow down the absorption a little bit, like if you want that stiffener to really soak deep in there, you may want to do it straight, but it's so much harder to work it into when the snowflake isn't wet already. And so that's why I like to get the snowflake wet. It also makes it a little bit easier to manipulate when I'm pulling the stitches around. Okay, so this is feeling pretty good, nice and sticky, right? Okay, I think that is probably good. All right, so I'm going to pause here for a second and I'm going to go wash my hands. And I will be right back. Okay, much cleaner hands. Now, I'm going to take a washcloth. I'm just going to kind of blot out any extra stiffener that we have. Most of the time it's in that center here. It'll kind of get clogged up on the back. So I'm just going to smush it in the cloth a little bit. Okay, think that'll do. So now it's time to bring in our blocking mat. Now I use these foam blocking mats, but you can do it on any surface that you can stick pins to, right? And so this is the blocking schematic or diagram that I use for the star snowflake. And I've just taken a piece of plastic wrap and taped it, wrapped it around and taped it down so that it just sort of stays put on there. Okay, so now I'm going to take my snowflake here, and my fingers are all sticky again. And I've got some rust resistant pins here. These are just blocking pins that I use with my regular crocheting. I'm going to need lots of them, so I'm just going to pull a bunch of them out. Okay, so I'm going to start in the center here. So here's the center of our snowflake, and I'm going to just pin that to the center of our board. Okay, and then I'm going to kind of pull these arms around so they're on the right side. And I'm going to start, let me turn this kind of sideways. A little bit more. There we go. Now you can see most of it. Okay. So now I'm going to take, and I'm going to start with just stretching out these long arms first. So I'm just going to stretch them out kind of on opposite sides here. I'm going to hold the center while I stretch. And I'm not going to try and overstretch them or anything like that. And I am going to try and make sure that I've got them turned right side facing, because that just makes it a little bit easier to see what I'm doing. And make sure that I get everything turned the direction I want it to turn. Okay. And this is the size 3 thread. So it's a little bit bigger than the other 2 snowflakes that I showed you. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to take these shorter ones, and confession, while I was making this one, I got distracted and I made my second loop only 10 chain stitches instead of 12 like it's supposed to be. So instead of undoing the entire long arm that I had already worked, I decided, well, we're just going to go with it. So, all right, now I'm going to take this and I want to twist these kind of the same direction each time. So I'm going to twist it like this. So I'm going to go 1, 2. So I'm just going to use that pin here to twist it around. So 1, 2. And I'm just going to stretch it as far as it wants to go comfortably. I'm going to try to remember to turn so that this is going the same direction each time. All right. Okay. And sometimes I have to think about it a little bit as I go around the circle. So don't feel bad if you do too. All right. So we just want to make sure that we work kind of quickly. We don't want to take too long. Although if it starts getting sticky, you can spritz it with some water, like from a spray bottle. And see, I started to turn it because it's not right side up, but it already looks pretty nice just with those pins right there. But let's go ahead and take it a step further. I'm going to take these arms now and do the same thing. I'm going to twist it around, and that doesn't want to cooperate doing it that way. That's okay. So I'm going to take 1, 2 turns here, or you could go ahead and do another one, right? And then I'm also going to turn this top, okay, or twist it. And I'm going to twist it and pull it as far as it'll go. Okay, so I did 2 turns for this bottom, right? Most of the time I just do 1, I think. I better stick to going around and around, or I'm going to forget which direction I twisted. All right, so there's 1 and 2 all the way around. And then I'm going to twist this top. My hands are kind of getting in the way, aren't they? Twist this top around too. All right, stretch it and pin it. That one can go a little further. Okay. Sorry, I scooted you off screen. All right, and then we're going to twist 1, twist 2, and then up here we're going to twist once all the way around. Like I said, just make sure that you work kind of quickly. And my fingers are getting a little bit tacky, so if you have to stop and wash your hands, or keep your water handy, right? Your little bowl of water if you used it. That way you can rinse off your fingers every once in a while if you need to. Okay, we go 1 and 2 and 1. And so you can kind of see that starch squishing out of those stitches there. So there's 1 and 2, and we'll just do 1 here. Okay, so now we've gone all the way around. Now I'm going to stop here for a second, and I'm going to open up the top of this loop to make a hanging loop. And all I'm going to do that, I'm almost off screen, aren't I, is I'm going to kind of open it up into a triangle like this, and then I'm going to use another one to pull it up this way. Hold on, I gotta turn it. So, see, my hands are starting to get sticky. All right, so we'll put 1 pin there, stretch it to the side this way. Sometimes you have to readjust the pins if they get pulled over. And that's why instead of just putting them straight up and down, I push them and put them in at an angle. And that helps it stay put where I want it. All right, so there. Can you see that all right? All right, and so that's how I open that up for the hanging loop. Okay. All right, so let's see. Next I'm going to do these little fingers here. All right, so let me move these out of the way. All right, so I'm going to take, now these were my modified picos, so these ones are longer. And I'm going to pull them at the same time and pin them. And so now I need to adjust this, right? Stretch that up a little bit taller. All right, now I'm going to pull the bottom ones down. 1 and 2. And then squish that around a little bit. Okay, now let's turn. I'm going to do the next pair. And this one's looking kind of crookedy there, so I'm going to pull this side up first, then pull this side over and readjust a tiny bit. Pull this one up, and now we'll do these bottom 2. So there's 1 and 2, and squish a little. There we go, that'll do. All right, next one. Get this side and this side and stretch them. And so I'm just using this blocking guide as a guide. I'm not trying to make sure that it fits exactly onto the marks. I'm looking at the snowflake itself and trying to make it look as neat as it can look, not necessarily trying to make it fit to the blocking schematic itself. Oops, there we go. And stretch this one up a little bit more. And I ran out of pins. Get some more pins. And do these 2 bottom ones. We're almost done with this, y'all. And this is a fairly complicated snowflake, right? As far as pinning goes, you can do a lot with it. And you could skip pinning it. I mean, see, these 2, they look okay without being pinned down. Just stretching them out and pinning them helps it be flat, and it helps you tweak it just a little bit so that you make sure that these little fingers are stretched up neatly opposite one one another. And like this one is kind of pulling up, so I can pin it down so it lays nice and flat. Okay, so one more here. And see, here's those flakies that when your snowflake dries, you may find some of those on the back side, especially of your snowflake. All you need is a stiff bristled brush to brush those loose. Usually a toothbrush is sufficient to do that with. Okay, and that one is still good, thankfully, because that's our open top. And there. All right. Now I'm going to show you one more. So you see the diamonds underneath here. Because I didn't pay attention, I'm not actually going to open these up for blocking the snowflake. I'm going to leave these straight. But if you wanted to open these tips up into a diamond shape, you would do it the same way we did with the hanging loop. So you just open this loop up at the top, pin it open into a triangle shape first, and then stretch this top up and pin it open into the diamond shape, right? And that's what, where is it? That's what you'll get here if you pin it open like this. But like I said, some of these are short on this one, so I'm not going to try and pin all of those open on this one. I'm just going to leave it straight. So I'm going to stretch it back out and pin it. Actually, I think I'll come around and see if I can stretch. Oh yeah, those will stretch a little bit further. We might as well. And if it starts getting too dry while you're working on it, oops, I untwisted it, then you can spritz it with a little spray from a water bottle, just some water on there, and that'll give you a little bit extra working time. All right, I think that will do for pinning this one. Yeah. Okay, so here is my snowflake that I've already blocked. I'm going to go ahead and take the pins out of it. And if they get stuck in there a little bit, just either wiggle them around a little bit or turn them, whatever you need to do to pull them out. So just kind of hold your snowflake down while you're pulling these out so that you don't like rip it upwards, if that makes sense, because we don't want to break the stiffener that we've added to it. So we're just going to take a minute and go all the way around. See how I'm holding those parts of the snowflake down as I pull the pins out, because sometimes that stiffener will stick to the pins. And I did go around and like turn them all to try to make sure that there wasn't a film of stiffener stuck to them, but you never know. So always be careful when you're pulling your pins out so that you don't crack an arm. Do we call them arms? I think they're arms. I think I call these little parts fingers. But that is all you have to do. Whoa, and then that was stuck there. Okay, so now we can lift it up off of here. And so if you have any extra bits, little flakes of your stiffener, you can brush those off. And see here, this one is a little wiggly. So what I would do is I would take a paintbrush and I would just put it back on here. You wouldn't have to pin it probably, but just take a paintbrush and add some more stiffener to any weak spots. So that arm is a little puny. So I would add some extra stiffener to that one. But the rest of these look pretty good. It's just that one didn't get quite enough right in this spot, I think. And so there's our little hanging loop right there. And it's, yeah, see, it's pretty stiff, just like that. All right, so that is what it looks like at the end. And like I said, if you have any weak spots, just go in and add some stiffener back on there straight, just with a little paintbrush or something like that. And you can use a washcloth or something to daub any extra off if you have. And then just let it dry. Let it dry for another 24 hours or so. And that is what your finished dried snowflake will look like. So let's have a look now at our snowflake in all its phases. So this is what it looks like when you finish making it. It's all squiggly and wiggly. It looks kind of like an octopus, right? And then, of course, here's what it looks like after blocking. And this is what we've got while we're blocking, right? Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention. After you get it all pinned, one thing that I do recommend that you do is you go around and you push all these pins in just a little bit further. And what that's going to do is it's going to kind of break the film that builds up around these pins. And so not all of these are pushing in, but you can also just turn them. You didn't see that. But you can turn them around instead of pushing them in if they don't push in any further. So I'm just going around and pushing them in or turning them if they don't push in any further. And it doesn't have to be much. It's just a little bit to keep that film from building up too much from the stiffener. And again, if you want to, if you have weak spots, like in this guy, we had the floppy, there's a couple slightly floppy arms. So I'm going to go back in, I'm going to add a little bit of stiffener here and let that dry again to firm that up a little bit more. And honestly, I find that happens more with the smaller snowflakes than the bigger ones. The smaller ones tend to need just a little bit extra help over the other ones. So that is how I stiffen my snowflakes with the Aleene's fabric stiffener and draping liquid. But you can basically use the same concept with any other stiffening agent that you like. So there she is. Ta-da! Actually, this one's prettier. I'll show you this one, right? Thanks for joining me. Bye.